Remember, please hit like and subscribe for me. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go. Hi, everyone. Today is Thursday, December the 18th. It's actually Wednesday, December the 17th for most of us that listen to the Moneyball Morning Report for the Benzinga Pro platform. But as many of you know, I am in Tokyo. And so we begin taking a look at the E-mini S&P 500. We have rolled to the March contract. Notice at the time of the roll, we were sitting at around 68.80. The roll happened a few days ago, so 68.80, 68.90 was about where we were. But the December contract was at about 68.28. And so there was a gap up into the next roll. And this happens when we roll from one contract to another and there's a gap. But what has happened is in yesterday's trading day, we absolutely filled that gap. We came into this 68.20-ish area and we continued to fade. We're now sitting at value area low, that's 67.78 in the E-mini S&P contract. That's going to give us a range that should, in quotations, give us a bounce. And we are seeing that a little bit in the pre-market. Let's go to the 30-minute chart. We realize now that the gap has filled. We've got a bottoming formation showing up in oil, in natural gas, in a number of different places. We have platinum at a peak, all kinds of things that feel like we could be getting ourselves ready for a little bit of a bounce. We have one more day until we have quad witching, or call it triple witching still. And so what do we want to stare down in the overnight? Well, first things first, let's take a look at where the traders are collecting inventory. They're collecting inventory from 67.73 to 67.96. Easily, you can trade that range for yourself. Notice, momentum is moving up, but our VWAP is flat, and we are still in negative trend. That doesn't mean to say that the bounce is going to be a sell zone definitively, but we could easily have a rotation that turns us back to the upside and works through the gap and back into the 68.80 area where this contract began in its state that it's in right now. Okay, so where might we take a look at that? Well, do you see these wicks right here? These wicks to the left of us are going to give us our breakaway zones. So if we get above 67.97, we're going to have bullish motion that very likely pushes us into 68.12. That being said, we're going to find sellers there at the first pass. They're not going to run right through it. The pullback that holds 6,800 is going to be the area that we want to look at. A lot of the option traders have been staring down this 6,800 number and saying, listen, if we lose that 68, we have to get up over it quickly, or we're going to see a really big drop, and that next drop, first pass 67.50, and then 6,700, where the big put wall is. The call wall still up at 7,000. Even after this complete fade, these bigger levels have not changed. And so what this is telling us is that the broad market in general is comfortable with this sideways action. And so we should be also not getting freaked out about, hey, we're going to sell off dramatically or XYZ. We really are caught in a big fat range. So staring that down, we can see when we look at our typical volume by time of day, once we roll over to the brand new contract, because this only goes 7 days into the past, all of these yellow bars are outsized relative to the prior 7 days. And so this is going to start looking a little normal later on, where they'll have some gray bars and some gold bars, but we can't really look at that right now because we are in the new contract for the first space. Where is it that we must think to ourselves, hang on, if I lose this zone, I can potentially add to my short? Well, the first thing would be, how well do we reject 6,800? If we can reject that and it starts slipping below it, you know, hey, if I just use 2 or 3 points of risk, I can get a short 25 points wide and then potentially even more into the 6750. That's where gamma line 1 is sitting right now, okay? And so that would be the next target. But I do suspect that we hold the floor here, and into the last 2 days of the week, we see a bullish bounce. Just a hunch, of course. Let's look at the flows, the gamma lines. We know the put wall, again, big put wall, 6,700. The 0 DTE put wall is also there, and the 0 DTE call wall also at 7,000. So everybody is in wide agreement into triple witching on this Friday. All right? That's important for us to realize. Let's take a look at the NQ. NQs looked like a bit of a train wreck. However, let's take a peek at it. First, 4-hour formation. We can see we've got downward flows. This line here at 24,950 is value area low. So we do expect traders to try to bounce off of this zone. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what they're doing in the overnight. Very solid bounce pattern. So are they lifting higher right now? Well, let's take a look at the inventory box. Where have they been accumulating? This one is actually already in breakout. If I were to estimate, the low edge, 24,890, the high edge, 25,000. It's broken above that. So what we want to see is a pullback that holds, ding, 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 the VWAP, right? Exactly. You want it to hold the VWAP. If it holds the VWAP, it tells us that buyers are taking the foothold. The first place they want to head to is value area low. That also happens to be the top of the wicks. Look at momentum. Momentum is moving, so the pullbacks are going to be areas that we can potentially take longs. Now, could it be that we have a little bit of a jolt in the overnight, pulling back? Maybe we could, but that's still a dip buying event. Where does the line in the sand mark from being bullish above to being bearish below? My suspicion is that that number is 24,890. If we lose that, we want to see a look below and go, right? So it would bounce, fade down, bounce, and then lose that level again. That's what we're staring down. My suspicion is that we have a look above and go, right? So it will come back, retest the zone, and move to the next space. Look at how the traders are upside down in the options positioning here in the NQ. The big put wall is down here at 24,000. The big call wall is up here at 27,000. Those not moving, pretty wide. However, the put for the 0 DTEs, 25,150. You know we need to be above that for the put sellers to win. The call 0 DTEs are down here at 24,400. We know that we have to be below that in order for the call sellers to win. So right now, it's either one or the other that is going to be winning in this space. And so the option chains they're sitting on the wrong side. So we could see a lot of volatility as they move back into the spaces that they're supposed to. It's extremely rare that a call wall would be so far below a put wall. It means that they've positioned in a way that is not going to be conducive. And so they're probably going to try to make some really big moves in the market to get it in one place or another. So either the put can win or the call can win, but right now nobody's winning. Both of these guys are losing because they're in between this space. Very rare. That's very rare. So they're going to move these options around tomorrow. I feel certain that that is going to shift. All right, so we have the zone. We know that below 24,890, we've got more bearish action. The gamma level 1 becomes 24,750, and then the one-day minimum, 24,600. I seriously doubt that that's going to happen. This thin volume pocket tells us that price action is fairly likely to run up into these levels in the overnight. And then we've got flow that takes us up into the point of control here at 25,320 with the value area high at 25,500. To me, I would not be surprised at all to see price action completely recover off of this big fade that we had during the trading day on Wednesday. All right, let's take a look at micro Bitcoin. Whoopsie, that's the wrong one. MT. Let's go to Jan. Are we in January? Looks like Jan, but I would say probably let's just use the 1, and that gives us what we're staring down. Okay, still have negative pressure. This trend line is still saying sell the bounces. Yesterday, I read something on one of my feeds on X, and it said this move up that we saw on Wednesday's trading day and the following move down in the Bitcoin futures was $140 billion of price action reversal. That's pretty incredible. But notice this big bounce, either a lot of people just not afraid to short it and they got on the back foot and had to push down, but look at where it pushed down, right at the call wall. Okay, so right now, the put wall and the 0 DTE put wall is down at this 75,000 area, right? That's the region we're looking at. Remember, last time we spoke, I talked to you about the carry trade, how the carry trade is influencing the liquidity measures in Bitcoin, and we see that happening. But here's something very interesting that is beginning to show up in the chart. We've spent 1, 2, 3, and this would be the 4th trading day holding this floor as support. Now, that's a tell in my mind. And this floor at 85,000 is telling us something about what the traders are trying to do. So as long as we hold this 85,300, I believe dips are buys. Now, you all know that I am bearish this instrument because I believe it has no utility, but I'm not going to be bearish and take a short if it starts running up the rails, right? That's just not, it's what I believe about the instrument, not what's actually happening in the chart. You just trade what is happening in the chart. And so if we look at this as old support, new resistance, we can see that this breakout above 86,500 is bullish. We're above the VWAP. We have higher lows. And so for those of us looking at this, we must say, wait a second, let me see if I can pull back and hold my VWAP. If not, we want to look for the point of control and the value area low right at 95,900. That makes a great buy zone. And then you can take it to the top of the price action event, which 89,000 is the 1-day max. And then 90,000 gives us this big pocket of volume right here. So this looks like they're trying to bottom, right? So for me, I would not attempt a short unless I break down below this 85,300, or I break down at the 88,000 marker, or I break down at the 90,000 marker. I am not going to do anything crazy in between. It's too sideways. I mean, even the dynamic cloud that we have here is going from red to green to red to green to red. That tells you you're in a cross current. All right, so be careful. Watch these gamma lines. The next big one is gamma level 4 that we want to touch. That's 87,000. Notice that looks a little bit like a topping formation. But when we've got higher lows building, it's much more likely to break out and then fade if that's what it's going to do. So you want to be really careful doing that. Okay, let's take a look at oil. F contract. Okay, what we're looking for next is the fade that gives us another bounce. And so let's take a look at the put wall. $55, that's the big put wall below. The value area low, 55.31, 0 DTE call wall at 56. Look at what happened towards the end of the day. Absolutely gigantic move. And now we gave it all back, but still a higher low. So this number around 56 is very likely to hold. And if it holds, 57 is where we go next. The call wall and the gamma lines for the high value node and gamma line 5 are all on top of each other between 56.50 and 57. The big call wall is at 61 now. That's moved up an entire dollar. So we really want to be careful paying attention to shorting oil anymore, especially after this move, right? We've broken the downward trend line. We want to hold it in this area, and then we can move to the upside. All right? People short the calls are on the back foot, so if they cannot get below this 56, they're going to turn around and buy the instrument, and it could be another savage move to the upside, like the one we saw in yesterday's trading event. All right, let's take a look at gold. Gold pretty sideways. Listen, I did not think gold was going to get up over here. I really did not. I really felt like it was going to fade. However, price action is telling me certainly that there is further upside motion for this chart in the near term, particularly if we take a look at the higher lows. Now, right now in the overnight, we've been sitting really sideways. Asia markets are now closed. The next thing we're waiting for is European markets to open, and we're sitting in this box. So the trading range for gold at this particular time, the low edge, look at it breaking down through here. That's very interesting. That's also where the 0 DT put wall is, but they bought it at 43.55. So here we are watching the retest of 43.55. Here are the kinds of things that can happen. This is fantastic. This is happening real time for us. So here's the interesting bit. Let's say the traders are thinking to themselves, absolutely, I'm taking a short here. Two ways you can do that. You can do a sell stop, which says, hey, I'm going to sell this as soon as it hits below the low of my last box. Or you can say, hey, I've got a buy limit at the last buy because I think it's going to sit in the box, right? Either of those is a valid way to trade the event. If it were something that you would be doing, you would see that the long would have opened up and you'd be long up into where? Above the 0 DTE put wall. And that 0 DTE put wall is 43.60. Let's say it can't get up over there. You should immediately be looking for price action to hold above that area, or say to yourself, you know what, I got in at 56, I am going to get out at 60, right? If you bought two contracts, you could buy one, you could buy both of them right there at that low, and then take one of them off right at the first target, because there's going to be a battle here. We don't know if it's going to be a battle like this when it moves to the upside, or it's going to be a battle like this, which continues to the downside. My thought is, when a chart has a sideways VWAP, like this one does, right? And it's sitting in the space like all of this inventory, this is what you're after. You're after all of this inventory and saying to yourself, all right, I'm going to trade from the bottom of the ledge to the top, but I have got to pay attention to what everybody else is looking at, and that is, where is the put wall? Where is the anchored VWAP from the prior day? And you can see it got to 61, but now it's moving back to 60. Great example of buying something off of a floor when the momentum is sideways and the VWAP is sideways, you could also, again, have that sell stop below the low of this edge that says, you know what, if this breaks down, I've got a formation that will give me 55 to 69. That's 14 points. That's 140 ticks at $10 a tick. That's a lot of cash if it loses the edge and begins to work its way down into the lower edges. So that looks great. You know, do I think it ought to rotate down? I do. But, you know, I also thought it would not rotate up. And I want to be clear about that. So we just have to look at what's happening. Overall, still making higher lows. But this formation looks to me like either it's going to sit sideways for a hot minute or it's going to break down. I do not see it breaking out. That being said, the call wall above, 4,415. The one-day max, 4,440. The put wall is where they're fighting right now for the 0 DTEs. That's 4,360. The one-day min is very close by at 4,330. And then value area low, 4,296. Pretty sideways. I would not be surprised if we really hit the high or the low edges of these numbers that I've spoken about by Friday, because Friday is going to be kind of big. All right, lastly, let's take a look at SPY. Wow, let's go to a 4-hour here. Okay, so obviously this is a break, right? We obviously have a trend line break. We've got momentum taking us all the way down into the pockets near 672. That's where the big pull wall is. This is my suspicion about why we bounce off of this level. We got a major put wall at 670. We've got the 0 DTE put wall at 672. I would imagine it holds. One-day minimum is 665. Could we go there? You know, potentially, but I doubt it. I really do. I doubt it. I suspect that we're going to have a reflexive bounce. That being said, where do you want to short this? If it loses 670 and tries to bounce, so you want to look for one, high volume that comes in around 670 and price does not move up. If that happens, you know price is very likely to move down, and then we would move into the one-day minimum, which is 665. All right, there's been a lot of volume being pushed around here. A lot of traders sitting in these spaces. We take a look at the 30-minute chart. We can see that they spent a ton of time accumulating inventory between 671.20 and 673, which is also gamma level 2. All right, if we break there, then we've got ourselves a measured move that will take us back to the top of value area low. Okay, which I like as a measured move. Now, we could get a lot of acceleration if people are on the wrongs, if too many people are on the wrong side of the boat, right? And so that space, I would like to draw the channel and have you take a look at this. Let's do this. If we have this channel and we move it up here, right? We broke down below the channel, but moving up into the base above 675. Easily we could move to 678 and then 680, where we've got the secondary line of 0 DTE options at that 680 event. So far it looks like dips are going to be buys. This is in a reflexive zone. So that is my thought. Just watch the floor, because if the floor gets broken through, all bets are off for upside pressure. And so just keep an eye on that. All right, everyone, take care.